And Tony's saying, hey, Cookie. So Cookie, just a heads up, we are live, just so you know. We're going to wait either 1 or 2 minutes before actually starting and kicking this off. We'll let people join in and connect. So in about a minute or two, we'll get started, okay? Hey, Arthur, the last name is Middlebrook. Yep. Okay, so I think it's about that time we'll get started. It's 5:04. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our event this evening. Before we get started, first I want to give a big appreciation to MOPD for making this event happen, for the family, for connecting and being here. Hey, cuz, thank you for just joining us tonight. I know you all have busy lives. Taking some time out of your day to join us is greatly appreciated. Before beginning, I want to do a quick access check. And I just want to make sure you can all see me good. You see me nice and clear. And if you can, please let me know and we'll try to adjust. This is a Zoom webinar, which means that the panel and the panelists are the only ones that are able to turn their cameras on or off. For the time being, the audience members are not able to do so, but later on during the question and answer section, we'll be giving you permission to turn your camera on and you can ask questions, especially for those that are deaf. You can turn your video on, state your question, and we'll move forward. We also have a cart service here, and if you need captioning, you should see a box at the bottom that's labeled CC. If you click that, it will enable captions for you. And if for whatever reason you don't like Zoom captions, we also have a separate caption link. The link is going to be put in the chat box for you to access it quickly and easily. We also have sign language interpreters present with us today behind the scenes. The cameras are off currently, and you can only hear the voice of one of those interpreters right now. You don't need to pin the interpreters or anything like that because the webinar format allows for you to see the interpreter quickly and easily. If you have any questions during the event, please hold your questions for the end. And towards the end, we'll open it to questions. You can press the raise hand feature in Zoom, which will alert us and indicate that you have a question, and we'll come to you and call you out for your question. This webinar is being recorded. And once the event is completed, the recording will be shared to those registered attendees and posted for future viewing. It might be posted on our MOPD website as well and on social media platforms. So let's get started. My name is Tony Wooden. I'm the ASL Direct Program Supervisor here at MOPD in New York City. Thank you all again for connecting to our event this evening in honor and recognition of Black History Month. We're calling this event My Black Deaf Family. And the purpose of this event is to honor Black History Month, of course, with a spotlight on our family, which is 7 generations strong of a deaf Black family. We're one of the largest deaf Black families in the US. I'll give you some names of the panelists. We're joined by Joan White. Actually, no, I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Go ahead, especially Joan. She's the oldest of the bunch. She can introduce herself. Hey, everyone. My name is Joan White. My sign name is like this, J White in the chest. And I'm the oldest of the bunch here of the family. And Tony's saying, that's my aunt. Next up, who do I see next? J3, go for it. Hey, everyone. My name is John Brand III. My sign name is J3. My mother, I'm Joan's son, and my cousins are also here. Tony, of course, as we already met. It's a joy to be able to see you all and be present here. Next up, Hannah. Hannah, do you see Tony?
My name is Hannah. I'm the last of 6. And I'm from Illinois. I'm mom of 8 children. Consider myself.
All right, thank you, Hannah. Dosia, go for it. Apologies. Apologies, the interpreter missed the beginning. So my name is Doja. My sign name is like this. I'm the 5th in the family. I'm joined by my handsome nephew who's here present. You'll see him soon. All right, Cookie, you're up next. Hello, everyone. Good evening. It's really nice to be here with you all, and especially with my family. I'm glad that people are here connected watching. My name is Cookie Brand. I'm the oldest of all of my first cousins. You know, we've got a lot of cousins. So, and I'm in Minnesota currently. Thanks, Tony, for making this happen and for this opportunity. Tony saying, no problem, no problem. Chaz, you're up next. Chaz is saying, hey, everyone, what's up? My name is Chaz. My mom is Dosia, as you already met her. I don't know where I'm at in the family line or in the cousin lines, but there's many of us present. I'm here and I'm currently in Indiana. This is Tony speaking. Well, thank you for introducing yourselves. I forgot I had to make sure to mention one important thing. We need to do audio descriptions or visual description of yourself for those that might be low vision or blind. And I'll go first. I'm here in my office. I'm an African-American man sitting in the office. I'm wearing a blue suit with a pink and blue striped shirt and a dark blue tie. Apologies, I forgot to do a visual description of myself. And I guess we'll go back to the panelists again to give themselves a quick visual description for those that might be low vision or blind. Joan, go first. Hi, I have gray hair, a pair of pink eyeglasses. I'm wearing a yellow blazer with a black and white yellow mixed blouse. And that's me. J3, you're up next. Hey, everyone. I have a pair of black glasses sitting in an office with a few Lego sets behind me in the background. You'll see different sets that are of various colors. I'm wearing a light blue shirt with an Apple Watch that has a green band. I have my hair in braids and I have a beard. Thank you, J3. Hannah, you're up next. And Hannah's saying, I'm wearing a black shirt with a necklace, with a gemstone necklace. And I have my hair up in locks and curls with some red lipstick and an Apple Watch on my wrist
Bracelet.
and a bracelet, a copper bracelet, and that's it. All right, awesome. Thank you. Dosia? Dosia saying, I have short hair, a pair of black glasses. I'm wearing a black blouse, and I'm a little silly too. Cookie, you're up next. Cookie saying, hello again. I have half the side of my head shaved and the other half in braids. I'm wearing a pink blouse with some ruffles on the shoulders. I have some necklace and put on some lipsticks today, and that's what I look like right now. Chaz, you're up next. Chaz is saying, hi, I'm using a black beanie with a tan polo shirt. And the polo shirt has some white stripes on the arms and on the collar. And I have a few tattoos as well. So I thank you again for your short visual descriptions. Really appreciate that. So let's get started with some questions. First off, I'm going to remind the audience that if you have any questions, please hold the questions to the end. We'll open it up for Q&A towards the end. So again, thank you all for joining us. I really, truly appreciate this time. I believe Hannah wanted to take a moment to recognize, or really to recognize my great-grandfather, Hannah's grandparents. Hannah, you want to take it away? And Hannah saying, yeah, I just wanted to dedicate this conversation to our parents, my mom, Mary J. White, and my father, Robert Middlebrook. And all of his grandchildren were either deaf or hard of hearing. So this conversation, and especially in this month of Black History Month, I wanted to recognize their tenacity in raising children in this difficult world. So I really wanted to just call them out and appreciate all the work that they did for this family. That's it. So I say thank you all. All right, so with that, I know there's many boxes on the Zoom right now, many questions, or excuse me, camera on. So we're gonna turn some cameras off and then back on a little at a time so that the audience can see who's responding more clearly. So let's go ahead and start first with just the 3 aunts for now. And the other 2, if you don't mind, turning your cameras off, and I'll focus on asking the aunt some questions. Is that okay? You good with that? Okay. So Joan, you're the oldest. What can you tell us about our history? When did it start? What do you know about it?
Okay, starting from the Patterns family, the mother and father, the Patterson family, that history, we know that it started with the Codwells, and then the next generation, for my grandmother, my great-grandmother was a Patterson and had 8 girls and 4 boys. Wow, 12 children. And the girls, all the girls were hard of hearing. And the boys, one of them was hard of hearing and 3 of them were hearing. And so as far as the deaf line goes through the girls specifically. And the offspring from them are either deaf or hard of hearing. And I know my grandmother, who was the oldest, my great-grandmother was the oldest in that family. You know, there's so many of them, I couldn't give you all of them but there's a lot of them. And I remember a lot about my great grandmother because she had taken care of me and my cousins. Both of us were the oldest in the family. So we were, so we knew them, and we knew a little bit more about our great grandparents. And she didn't really tell a lot of stories, but she did do a lot for us. I mean, she talked about working through that time for other families. And then she did, let me back up a little bit. She did say the family started in Kentucky. And I can't remember exactly the name of the town, but it was a very small town in Kentucky, and they had moved to Illinois and settled in there, like where we are right now, in the town of Aurora. And that's where most of the family is in this town. I mean, how many family members are here? I can't even tell you. It's hard to even estimate numbers, but there's a lot of us. And I've met, and I have to remember, I remember as a grandchild, I had met some of my great grandmother's sisters and cousins when I was young. And one had passed away. One of the sisters had passed. The reason that she had passed, I don't really remember. I think that's all. I mean, there's lots of other sisters. Maybe they have some more information. Do you have anything that you want to add? This is Dosia. Honestly, when we talk about grandma and grandpa and talk about, I was so young. So I did know both of them. I did know that they were deaf. Hannah, do you have more? Yeah, I'm happy. Just one. I do know that there was a lot of the information that I got was really from my sister and my mom, who passed away when I was 9. So I hadn't really got a lot of the information, but I know my dad passed when I was 17. So it's hard to imagine when we talk about history, there's so many things we don't know. And that's why we, when we would go to school in Aurora, just different, it was always, people in my classes it was rare that there were people in my classes that were not related to me because there was so many of us. Yeah, I have that same experience too, Dosia, same. And when I had, not in the deaf school, but I was in mainstream class. When I was in mainstream class, then there were people who were not related to me. But I just know that our history is strong. I just don't have a lot of knowledge about that because my parents passed when I was young. Dosia, did you want something to say? Yeah. I just wanted to add, when I was going to school and I was mainstream, I would say from 1st to 7th grade, I had one cousin that was in school with me as well, all the way through that time. So that was really nice. But a lot of our family, we have such a huge family. It didn't matter if we were mainstream or we went to the deaf school. Our families, our cousins, everybody was there. And Tony's like, yes, absolutely. And Joan is saying, yeah, that's true. I wanted to add something about that. In Illinois, School for the Deaf, we had like about 6 cousins going at the deaf school, and they were there, and some of the teachers were also, and they remember our family because so many generations had gone to that school in Illinois, and the deaf school, such a strong legacy there. Yeah, Dosia is saying that's right. I know there's 3 or 4 cousins I know had gone there. My dad graduated from that Illinois school from the deaf. 1955. So everyone, knew my dad. He was the star football player. And Tony's like, oh, definitely. Well, I've heard of stories about him for sure. I just wanted to back up for the audience. Just for the sisters, maybe Joan, who is the oldest, she's the first one. And then you do have other sisters. There's Jerry. No, am I wrong? I'm wrong. So there's Robert, that's a sibling, and he's the second, and he's deaf. So that's Bobby, right? He's deafblind. Robert, aka Bobby. And then the third in the family is Julia. And then Jerry. And then the fifth one, Evstosia. And the sixth is Hannah. All right, great. That's the six of you. That's beautiful. I just want to explain for the audience. Perfect. I do have another question I wanted to say related with language specifically. What language did you use? BSL, the Black Sign Language? Did your family use ASL? What do you feel like the language of when you grew up and how it's different from now and the perspectives involved? Yeah, anyone want to start? They can start. Okay. Yeah, Joan will start. Language was very different. When you talk about sign language, it was different. At that time, time changes, everything evolves. So during, like with my mom, during that time at the deaf school, the education was extremely limited because during that time, Black and white students, deaf students, was segregated. And most of the Black students, they didn't really focus on education. Their educational opportunities were completely diminished. And so they would teach the white deaf kids, give them a better education so that they could move up, but not the Black deaf kids. And so we went 1973, was the deaf school 1973, 1972 is when they integrated at that time. And at that time, that's when language and even the socialization and the education really improved. But before that, it wasn't there. It was much less. Do you remember any of your old signs from back in the day, just things that were different, kind of maybe what they looked like? Josie goes, oh, I can remember some. My father used to sign this, and it's a hand going across the thing. And he used to sign, it's a hand going in a shape across the face. And he used to sign that for upset. And I always knew every time my dad signed that to me that he was upset. There are other signs, like this, for example, cooking, which is a flat hand going back and forth on another hand. And then he would describe cooking almost like a gesture for pots and pans. And that's what they used for cooking before. And there is a difference between ASL, American Sign Language, and Black Sign Language. And for me, I would see Black ASL has more color, for sure. It has more facial expressions and more actions and more, oh, we say that, oh, you see this, or like things like that. So it's a bigger thing. And when you're in a Black family, when we're all together and we're going back and forth, we're signing super fast with each other, our facial expressions, our attitude, everything, it has a whole different kind of vibe. And Joan is saying, for example, there's a sign that I really love, 4-4, and it's a finger going from the front, and that was an early. There are some signs, early is on the hand, and then there's another sign that's early on the nose. And Hannah is saying, Black ASL or Black Sign Language, for the longest time, I always thought it was the same. I didn't even realize that there's a difference between Black ASL and ASL. And for me, because that's how I was raised, I didn't realize there was a difference. This is Black ASL is my language. It's normal for me. It's normal for us. It's our family. Tony is speaking. In the Midwest, there's a thing, I know there's a sign for going to for mean, and it's on the nose. And I didn't know that. I'll sign it here in New York City. Nobody sees this. It's a hook shape on the nose, and that's the sign for mean. That's something that I knew grew up. That's like, but you know, I had always grew up signing that for mean, but not very many people see that sign. I didn't know if it was a Chicago thing or it was my family's thing, just something like that. But it's interesting to see all the different kinds of signs. One thing before we switch over to J3, I wanted to ask another question. So our family tree, what does it look like? I know it's huge. I know our family is really big, and we're just, one little branch of it. So when you talk about our family tree, how many other branches are there that you know of? Oh, Joan is like, oh, I think grandmother had like, 13 brothers and sisters and some of them died, but one of them died, so it was 12. So if you think about that, the family is huge, just the generation goes and how it goes down. So I know Mary's line has a lot. We're part of that. And she had 8. And then our grandmother's name was Mary, like our grandmother's name was Mary. And then she had other sisters. There was Elizabeth. Oh my gosh, there's so many. I can't remember all of them. Yeah, that's right. All 8 were deaf and hard of hearing. Because I know there's many family members. There's so many that their last names are related to us. There's Foster, Lequaro, what is it? Quinton. And like Foster, there's also somebody said. So it's a lot. The family tree is a lot. Dose is saying there's so many. And even just from our family, just the sisters. So, and that's right. We're saying we're 7th generation. Is that correct? Of deaf? Now, my sister's daughter, Cookie, her girl, she's deaf, hard of hearing. She can explain a little bit more about that, and I'll ask Cookie for sure. No problem. So we're going to have the ants go off, and we're going to have J3 come up.
All right, Cookie, J3, and Chaz, come on up. All right. J3 saying, I was just watching this conversation and I realized Henry Jackson, who's been commenting in the chat, really knows our family. I noticed that he's been inputting some commentary as the conversation's going forward. And I've been keeping an eye on that. It's pretty good to know that he knows all these little details. I had my camera off. I was trying to interject during all that, but definitely Herschel Jackson, he knows this whole family. I think he knows the whole family tree. He's a wealth of information of our family for sure. Okay, and Tony's saying, all right, we have someone else here, our cousin Lee. Okay, hey Lee, good to see you. Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it. All right. So Lee's the youngest of all of us here. She's the youngest generation. And I just wanted to see if we can go around sharing your experiences about how you grew up in a deaf family. And especially now in our era, what does that mean to you? Just share a little bit about your life experience, what it was like growing up. Let's start with J3. This is J3 speaking. So I grew up, I was a quiet child. I was a quiet but observant child. I wouldn't necessarily participate in like all my other cousins are wild and chatty and would do stuff. I would just stay back and just observe. You know, I just liked absorbing information and learning as much as I could. We were fortunate that everyone signed. I never felt any sort of struggle or any sort of disappointment of not being able to have communication access, because even our hearing cousins all signed. And so communication wasn't an issue. As my aunt and my mother mentioned, when you go to school, we were surrounded by family, right? We grew up going to school with all of our cousins. I went to school with Tony, another cousin, Nathan, and the three of us really just went through our school years together. High school, unfortunately, kind of separated us out because I went to a deaf school. They went to another mainstream program. But it was such an incredibly good experience to have family that could support us during that time and could support us during the developmental years of our life. You know, going to the deaf school was it made a huge impact on me because I learned about ASL. I learned more ASL in the deaf school than with the family, of course, because most of the family signs or speaks in a more English way. And for sure, it was a big combination of Black ASL, signed English, speaking, and whatnot. But it was great to have that diverse access to language and to have such an incredibly diverse family. It was a true privilege. Tony's saying, yeah, thanks for sharing that. Cookie, you're up next. And Cookie saying, yeah, you know, we were very fortunate to have this family, to have language access, something we could all truly enjoy. It was really interesting because I've experienced having a hearing family, my ex-husband's hearing family, and seeing what that was like. You know, my family is used to signing. I used to go visit that family and I felt completely disappointed because now I had a little bit of the experience of what an average deaf person feels. There was a lot of miscommunication. There was no access to what was going on. And it made me realize how fortunate we were to have our family being as fluent in sign language as they were. For most of my education from elementary to middle school, I had access to education because of the access with my family. You know, I would go to other schools and see, interpreter's clarifying. Once I went to a deaf school, I was able to see how much access I had to everything because of sign language, sports and academics. I wanted more of that, you know. My family was a great start, but I wanted more of other areas. And I really appreciated my life experience. But it's all thanks to our deaf family, and I absolutely love it. All right, Tony, Chaz, you're up next. Chaz is saying, you know, I'm hearing, my parents are deaf. I was raised as a coda, and my experience is a little bit different. You know, we lived in Illinois with my siblings. J3 was at the deaf school, and I remember when I was younger that I would always want to go to the deaf school. I can't, obviously, because I'm hearing, but I remember feeling that I really wanted to be there because I would hear John talk about the school and his experience there, and it made me want to feel a part of that. Another aspect of my experience was how we would get together and do things with music and just have good vibes with the family and flow like that. I remember hanging out with J3 and Tony, and we would have some overlap. Interpreter missed that part. I remember going to J3's house and playing a little bit of the cello. And so my experience, oh, sorry, excuse me, interpreter's clarifying, playing with Lego sets. And I remember being able to experience life with them. I had the best of both worlds, right? I could hang out with my deaf family and still be able to inject myself into the hearing world, but have strong bonds and attachment to my deaf family because everyone in the family signed. You know, we were all around the same age, our cousins at least, and I absolutely loved it. Tony's saying, it's nice because I remember, you know, most deaf kids are raised by hearing families, and Chaz has had an interesting experience because he was raised as a hearing person in a deaf family. It's a very unique experience and it's just a great part of his life experience. Lee, your turn, the baby of the family. I ain't a baby, but okay. As Chaz mentioned, I went to Illinois School for the Deaf, and I grew up with a lot of cousins, like Chaz's family and the Price family, and I felt like I could fit in just fine. And I was mainstreamed as well, and I had both experiences. You know, everyone in my family is deaf, and I have easy access to communication, and it just made things easier for me. It's things I appreciate because I've seen at school where they're sometimes the only deaf member in the family and how difficult that is for them. And so I'm incredibly grateful. My dad's side is all hearing, so I kind of get that experience as well for other deaf people because nobody signs in that family. It's just the two of us. And I'm not used to that because on my mom's side, you know, everybody signs and it's just a part of life. It's very normal. I've never felt left out there. And I feel very, very fortunate to have that kind of setup of a family and to be close with that. Yeah, you know, I love all of y'all. You know that. Tony's saying, did you feel that because you had access to language that it placed you in a privileged position of some sort? Or did you ever feel like, oh, I'm one of those lucky ones? Because, you know, 90% of deaf kids are born to hearing families. So most don't have access to language at an early age. So they have language delays and overall just language deprivation. But obviously this is very different in our case here because you had access to language from the moment you were born. So how does that feel for you all? And Lee is saying, you know, I feel extremely fortunate because it's been passed on through several generations where everyone knows sign language. And I've seen the experiences of other people. You know, I understand how they feel because of my dad's side of the family. And so it just makes me reflect and be grateful for my experience, knowing that I had access. You know, everyone's deaf in our family, and it's just something we never had to put so much thought into. You know, I imagine if most members of our family were hearing, what would that feel like? But I'm grateful that our family is mostly deaf and we have access to language. J3 is saying, you know, I definitely feel privileged because everyone signs. Everyone has been exposed to sign language, to other deaf children. Even when we were mainstream, there were other deaf kids at school. And I always felt that I fit in. I felt like I was truly a peer of those kids at school. At the deaf school, you know, I never felt, and I never had any sort of bias towards other deaf kids or any sort of judgment on any other deaf children at the deaf school, even though I know that I had access to language in my youth. A lot of my peers at that time at the deaf school were hard of hearing. And so I felt very, very much just like them because I can speak for myself if I have to, and I can also sign for myself. And I never felt less than, and I also never felt the need to put others down because of our privilege. And I know sometimes maybe other kids looked at us with some sort of privilege because of our deaf family, but they never made me feel that way. And if those kids ever did feel that I was privileged in some way, shape, or form, they never made it known. You know, we just went on life, hanging out, going through school experience just as peers. And it's just kind of like how I feel right now. Anybody else? Tony, Cookie, you want to share? Go ahead, Cookie. Or actually, Chaz going. Yeah, so as was mentioned, most deaf kids are raised, about 90% are raised by hearing families. And for me, it's opposite, obviously. As I mentioned I've told my family several times, I'm the ugly duckling of the family because I was born to a deaf family and I'm the one hearing kid and I absolutely love it. Tony saying, Cookie, you want to add something? Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with everything that everyone has said so far. You know, I work at a school counselor at a deaf school in Minnesota. And for the past 5 years, I've worked with a variety of students. Most of those students have hearing parents, as has been mentioned several times. They've had various challenges throughout life, but overall, it's really interesting for me to see that some of those students are from deaf families and that the students that come from deaf families have a little bit more confidence, have early language access. And I just use the other sign for early. That's a Minnesota sign that I used. And I got stumbled on my signs here. So as I was saying, those deaf kids that come from deaf parents have early access to language. And you can see how valuable that exposure is for them and their development from birth, because their self-esteem, their confidence, their access to the world is just that much better. And for their mental health as well. And so I'm incredibly fortunate that I've had access to those. My daughters, I have 2 daughters, one hard of hearing and one deaf. And I'm hoping to encourage people who have deaf children to learn sign language because they need to have exposure to formal language, which ASL is, and it's crucial in developmental years. J3, go ahead. J3 saying, you know, when children have early access to language, that's the start of the building of their identity and the confidence with which they build it. It's key for them to have confidence in life, to deal with people and everything that will come their way. You know, some who are born into hearing families, those deaf kids are born to hearing families, don't get that. They get that later on in life and struggle. The truth is that they struggle. They don't have access to language early on. And I feel, as Cookie mentioned, she's right on. Early access to sign language for babies that are born deaf is incredibly valuable. It helps all of us. It obviously helped everyone in our family to communicate in sign language because all of our aunts and uncles and cousins, we all have our deaf role models who had helped us through life, who've helped us build our confidence and confront life, you know? So when your child's deaf, you don't want them to feel confused as to what kind of identity should they subscribe to. So the key is exposure to language as early as possible. Can't emphasize that enough.
Yeah, definitely 100% Tony is saying. I know that my experience related with my upbringing, it's a little bit different, but I just grew up mostly, you know, with my dad. I was with my dad's family who was hearing, my mom's side, as all of you. And so I would go back and forth, just like, and I do remember, just like J3 said, with my cousins and the 3 of us, man, we were just like, the 3 of us were inseparable. We just hung out all the time, doing all sorts of stuff. He's like, oh yeah, all the time. Yeah, we would go to the school. Yeah. At the deaf school. And I can remember I was disappointed when I wanted the 3 of us to stay together and we couldn't. But I can remember, you know, I was mainstreamed and I didn't go to deaf school, even though I desperately wanted to go to the deaf school. And I wanted that exposure and the communication and the language and just being with people who signed and everything. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that, but it was a deep desire of mine. I wanted to be with my cousins. I wanted to go to the deaf school like that. And so looking back, and I'm grateful for my grandparents and for encouraging me to be involved with the family. Especially my mom's side of the family. I'm grateful for that because I'm so grateful for that. Definitely. Lisa asking, I wonder why. I mean, why didn't they want you to go to a deaf school? Because your dad said no, or yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's right. He was just like, pretty much, he was like, nope, that's it. Nope. And it was far. One of the reasons was it was far. So if you had gone to the deaf school, do you think that you were a different person than you are today? He was like, whoa, well, that is a good question. Tony is asking. That's a good question. Would I be a different person? Possibly, related with even just my exposure, my interaction with my peers. I feel like when I was in school, I felt very isolated and I didn't really have a lot of friends. I mean, people would talk to me, but I didn't have the same kind of connection and same with sports. I was the only deaf person in sports, basketball team, anything like that. I really wanted, and also I was in track and I wanted to be able to be with my peers who knew my language and do that. So I didn't get that until much later, until I was in college, where I was like, oh, this is so great. Everybody hears signs and I can communicate with everybody. And it was such a much different experience. It was so cool. So I just wanted to share my experience with that. And Leah's asking, was that at Gallaudet? No, that was at RIT. Oh, okay, you went to RIT. I'm supposed to understand. And then John is saying Cookie. All five of us, did we all go to, is Cookie the only one that graduated from Gallaudet here? I think everybody else went to, yeah, I think Cookie's the only one. Yeah, for master's, but undergrad wasn't there. Cookie is the only one that went of the five of us here on screen right now that went to Gallaudet. Tony is related with our family histories. Is another thing I wanted to say. Cookie, there's so many people who have been asking me if we're related to related to Black ASL specifically, and the research that's doing that, and following our family. The last name of Smith, someone asked, are we related to that family? But I don't know that we are. Is that right, Cookie? Yes, that's right. I mean, it's really about the location. It's different. So that's just one thing that came in. We're not related to them. That was a question, but definitely. Is there anything that you want to add? We switch back to the other three. The first, yes, Cookie. I just want to add one thing related to our family. It's really a very strong, it's in the Midwest, such a strong thing of our experience. It's different than people who grew up that are from the southern states or people that are even so. I think that might be a reason why our sign language and how we use are different things from that. It really depends on the region and where you're from and the generation, then how it's passed down from generation to generation specifically. And you have to think about really regional signs and the locations that we have. We think about that and how different locations have different kind of signs that they use. And when you talk about Black deaf families, regionality has a lot to do with the signing that they use. I feel like that there's not enough exposure, there's not enough spotlight, to me speaking, on Black deaf families generationally, and the history that we have. So many of that history has been erased or been lost or hasn't been passed down. Or at some point, generations don't know, or it gets disrupted in some way in the lines. So I really hope that because of our history that we love and want to preserve so much, that we will be able to do that as well. You know, we're one of the biggest Black deaf families in the United States, and which is nice. I think one of the things Chaz is saying, something that Cookie was saying, and J3, and having Joan White, really to have that, it's nice because we are able to get together and gather and have that history, even though we're such a huge family, and we're able to learn those things. I think J3 was talking about the family tree. Are you working on the family tree? It goes, my mom has information. My mother has lots of information specific of our family tree, but there's still more information that we're still gathering more information. It's just the surface of it, really. There's so many different things. She's got a lot of documentation, but there's still so much more what we can do actually if we had like DNA or ancestry.com to trace these lines. And really, if we decide to research in our family and get all that information, it's something that my mom would love to have so that we could have that legacy and be able to have the documentation and really track our family. And, you know, our family includes so many other families too. We're related to so many other people. And I think that our family is so large and so vast. It would take many, many, many years and generations to continue that kind of research, because generationally, you know, I think sometimes our generation, we're not really motivated in the history or doing the research, but we need to get somebody who's motivated to do that. And Tony's like, yeah, someone needs to roll up their sleeves and get in there and do it. That's definitely something that we want to be able to pass down to our posterity in the future, our future generations of this family line. We want to be able to do that, to have that family tree and have that legacy that and everything they'll be able to give into them. Cookie has something to say. Oh, wait. Hannah actually has a hand raised. Oh, you want to say something? We should have Cookie first. Hannah's saying, yeah, I just wanted to, who goes first? Hannah? Okay. Go ahead. Hannah, go ahead. I just want to say brief as I come in, is when we're talking about the ancestry, I took a test last year. You know, we talk about our African diaspora and the ancestry we have. Joan White will also be, did a DNA test and found out that our family, the grandparents' DNA is from Africa, Cameroon area specifically, and there's other areas. The Equatorial Guinea, and there's a specific tribe that they were able to track our family line through. And so really to see that history recently, it's one of those things we do need to put more research in, and we're going to get more information with the DNA testing to do that. And so maybe all of us will help motivate us from that specific tribe. And it's B-U, interpreter, oh, and Bunni, B-U-N-N-I. Cookie, did you have something that you wanted to add? Yeah, thank you for that information, Hannah. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to say, I don't know, I feel like it might be a little bit off topic, but just something that Chaz had said about the other cousins that we have in the Twin Cities. He's just mentioned, you know, when we go to events, we always will meet people. Anytime we go to a deaf event, you'd be like, oh, that's another family member. I didn't know we were family. And so it's really a great thing to do that. I know that for myself, several years ago, I think it was 6 or 7 years ago, I went to an event, and it was a show. I think you might remember that. And there was a family picture. It was huge. It just had all these people just had to keep going out and going out and going out and going out just because the family was so large. You could see so many of us. And every time I go to any kind of conference or different death events, I'm always meeting someone new. Oh, your family's so cool. They say, oh, it's the first time I met you. It's the first time I met them. It's amazing that there's family really everywhere. Second cousins, third cousins. Yeah, John is saying the same thing. We have family everywhere. We everywhere. Chad, did you want to say something? Yeah, just out of the blue, sometimes you'll meet somebody, you'll be like, oh yeah, we're related. And I'll be like, what? It's so crazy. Just out of the blue that happens. Yeah, you just meet people and then you just, yeah, definitely. That happens all the time. I can vouch for that. Yeah, it's just, I don't want to go on and on with, we're limited for time, but I just wanted, there's so many things that I'd heard from my sister. And she had taken a few classes at Gallaudet, and she was, about Black Death history. And she, in that course, they were talking about our family. And it was really interesting. Says, I'm not sure if it was true or not, but at Gallaudet, there's a course about, Black Death history, and our family was featured in that. So I was like, I didn't know if any of you heard about that or anything. It's just that other people had told me that our family was featured in the course. And I just thought that was really cool. I don't know if you heard that. Lee's saying, I feel like, also with the older generation, it's really nice that there's just, I'll be honest, I don't know a lot of things of what's going on and what happened with past generations. I do want to know more than I do now, but it is really it's exciting to know that I come from such a long line and that we were going to have future generations as well.
You're saying, yeah, I agree. Hopefully that's coming up. And J3 is saying, we could have a family reunion too. That's always really difficult because there are so many different parts of the family everywhere. To have one reunion that, we need to take over a football stadium or something like that to have the family reunion. So we could have all of us there for sure because we are a huge family. All right, Tony's saying, okay, I want to go back to our aunts. Just for a few questions. Let me do a time check. Okay, it's 6 o'clock. All right, we're gonna keep going till 6:15, and then we're gonna open it up for questions, okay? And hopefully we'll give the audience a chance to either make some comments, ask some questions, and we can field them. All right, let's switch to the aunts now. Joan, Hannah, and Dosia. All right, Hannah. Okay, we got Dosia. Hannah's gonna come in a second. There she is. Joan, you had your hand up, go for it. This is Joan speaking. Our family in the past held several reunions. It was hosted by our, let's see, the grandparent generation. They were the oldest relatives. I think of that generation, there's two left. One of them is Robert Gertzig. Interpreter probably messed that up, but he's about 80 years old as of right now, but it's a good time to try to get him and get as much information as we can from him or one of the cousins. This would be Betty. She's also a good wealth of information about the family's history. But those two being the only surviving members of that generation might be gone soon. They're in their 80s. There's a lot more history that precedes them that we might not know about. So I think it's a good time to try to sit with them and ask them all the questions. Betty lives in Illinois. Robert, he's in Florida. So it'll be hard to get to them just for the distance, but I think it's urgent that we get with them as soon as possible. Tony's saying, yep, I agree. Joan's adding, I also wanted to mention or comment during the discussion about language. During my grandma's time, or our grandmother's time, at that time, she fought in her own way to understand English because obviously she was illiterate, but she learned by trying her best to read the newspaper. You can imagine that she struggled reading the newspaper. And when she eventually had children, which is our parents, our mom, excuse me, she wasn't able to teach the skill. So she just sent her to a deaf school to gain an education. Communication was there at the home, of course, but it wasn't a close bond because, there were challenges in the past and she struggled herself with literacy. And she wanted, it wasn't a time where there was much privilege or success for Black families. And so I remember my mother making a comment that she went to the deaf school and she said that at that time, the school was segregated. Education usually focused on educating white children and neglected the education of Black children. And so you can imagine that the access to language and education and the development didn't occur as well as it could have. You can imagine they would be handed books where children just had to figure things out and without having instruction or a guide during the schooling years. And, we had to learn our own way because our mothers couldn't pass on literacy skills or language skills at that time. So I just wanted to make that kind of little comment. As to my personal experience, I was born hearing, and at about the age of 6 is when I lost a significant percentage of my hearing. And I picked up sign language and I've used sign language ever since. And I'm really grateful and fortunate to have a deaf family that was such a great resource to learn about life. And my mom, as my mom always said, hey, she made this sign like this. You remember that? I wanted to know what she was talking about. I would stare at her and she'd say, take your nose and take it over there. In other words, stay out of our business. Dosia is saying, I remember my mom would stop and look at us and right away, you knew the look, you had to leave. You couldn't stay there. You're in trouble. And Joan is saying, we picked up a lot about life through our family. And that's something that we'll never take for granted. We just pick things up through family members and over time, and friends would see our family and would comment about how cool it was that our family had this very unique bond. I feel extremely fortunate for sure. So I'm saying that's really nice, Joan. Dosia or Hannah, did you want to make a comment? Dosia saying, I have 3 kids. One's a coda. I always thought it was going to be deaf, and he passed the hearing test. And I was a little upset, but whatever. You taught him sign language. And then we did a second hearing test, passed it again. And I was like, all right, well, we're going to keep signing to him. And then the next 2 kids were born deaf. And again, as has been said, we feel extremely fortunate because the family interactions are always in sign language, right? Our kids never feel out. They're always in. They're on it. They're in with the flow of conversation. The moment the door opens, you let them flow and they're taken care of. We can hang out without any issues. Tony's saying, one thing I'm noticing in regards to the kids in our family is that our family, that the deaf gene follows the women in our family. you know, some of the men in our family have had hearing kids. So I wonder if that's Hannah saying, yeah, I think the women in our family are the one that are passing the deaf gene, not the men in the family. And Tony's saying, I always thought that was interesting. I know Cookie, she mentioned that briefly. That's just something that I've noticed over time. But my kids are both hearing. You know, I've got two of them, and I just thought it was an interesting little fact in our family. Kind of saying my children, you know, I've got 8 kids. And let's see, there's only 3 deaf, hard of hearing children, and then the rest are hearing. So for me, it's really interesting because my sister, I think, let me see, my nieces and nephew, wait, Chaz is the only hearing one out of all my nieces and nephew, right? And Spencer, that's right, Spencer, who's hard of hearing. Chaz is hearing, right? Wait, hard of hearing? About 20 or 23, at the age of about 20 or 23, about half of them are deaf or hard of hearing. And Hannah's saying, yeah, the point is that the deaf gene follows the females in the family. Hannah, go ahead. And Hannah's saying, one more thing that I wanted to say, in our family, you know, we basically made our own culture, our own way of life. We have our own stuff. When we get together, it's all about music and dancing and partying. That's always been that way in our family, that, you know, we always put music on and we sign some songs together. That's just like kind of building our own culture. It's our own thing. It's something very unique to our family. And I really appreciate that personally. Tony's like, yeah, when our family gets together, there's always music, there's people dancing, there's always some sort of performance or something. I've seen that repeatedly over the years. Joan, or Hannah's saying, J3 is our DJ usually, right? That's right. And Joan is saying, when I went to, well, let me back up. Before my time at a deaf school, I learned music through my hearing cousin. And she passed music along to me and shared that aspect of life with me. And then I went to a deaf school. They had jukeboxes in place, which played extremely loud. You know, you remember jukeboxes, right? That's right. And I loved playing with jukeboxes, playing with the lyrics of songs and performing them. The students, the deaf students that are at the deaf school would tell the teacher about my love for signing music. I had 2 cousins at the school as well that were there at the time, and they loved to dance. And that started to be well known. And then when I came home from the deaf school, you know, during the summer break or holidays or whatnot, I would teach my siblings what I learned about music and the lyrics of song and my performances. And of course, Hannah's saying, those are 70s, right? That was the 70s. That's right. That's right. It was the 70s. Joan is saying we would have our own way of singing. And we would say, we are family. You know the song, We Are Family? All 5 of us would get together and perform that song. And people were enamored with our performance. It was something very near and dear for all of us. And that's a really solid memory I have from our time growing up. And Tony saying, yeah, of course, I remember that song. It's a great song. Okay, it's 6:10, and I really want to give an opportunity to the audience because there's a lot of comments coming through, a lot of hands being raised. And so I guess we'll give an opportunity to the audience to make some questions. And for you audience members, if you wanted to make a comment or a question, please go ahead and raise your hand. I'll enable the permission for you to be able to start your own video if you're deaf, so you can ask your question in sign language. And if you're hearing, you can just unmute. Let me look at the list real quick. Give me a second. And this is Tony. So I see 4 hands raised right now. The first one I'm going to call on is Vipul Ponapa. If you're there, go ahead and Arthur, are you able? Yeah, okay, great. Thank you.
Hi. Go back.
Hi.
Put your video on. Say hi.
Hi, my name is Sean. I am Tony's younger son. I mean, youngest son,
Only son.
only son.
And I'm proud to belong to this family.
And I'm proud that we belong to this family.
Oh man, wow. So for the audience to know, that was my son who just made a comment. That's why you see me smiling and laughing. My son is here. Thank you, Sean. Love you, buddy.
Love you too.
All right, we'll talk soon. Bye. Okay, let's move on to Oren Barat.
Hello. How are you? First let me state that Tony taught me some sign language when we were at our RIT together, and I can spell my name, and I take pride in that to this day. I really do. And my name is Orin. And Tony gave me the nickname Cool Orin. I'm not very fluent in sign language, but I have to take a moment to celebrate the culture of people, of my brothers and sisters that were given this life, right? Like it's life. And it doesn't mean that we're not important. It doesn't mean that we're not special. It doesn't mean that we don't do the things that other people do. We actually do it better than them. And I want to say something to my brother Tony tonight. I'm so proud of you, my guy. Listen, we went to school together. I didn't even know I did not know how to say 20 in sign language, right? You taught me that. 30, you taught me numbers. And I want to say, going to RIT and it being the second largest deaf school in the country, and learning from you, Tony specifically, and learning from other people, Karif, I can go down the list of names of people that has touched my life. And I want to just say thank you for enlightening the world about a culture that exists. It exists. And it's important that we celebrate this culture.
Thank you, Oren. It's really good to hear from you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Next person I see here is Stephanie Bullock.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, first of all, just thank you for having this lovely event. It's a pleasure to meet your beautiful family. My question is, I'm curious if when a deaf child was born to deaf parents in your family, I'm wondering if the doctors would push cochlear implants on the parents in the way often happens when hearing parents have a deaf child. I'm just curious about that.
Any answers? When doctors encourage cochlear implants, for me, for my personal opinion, with children, I don't think I would rather wait until they're older and then they can make that decision for themselves if they want a cochlear or not. And then, because, some people, have a cochlear, it doesn't work. For myself, I have an implant last year, and I love it. I've put it in because I wanted to be able to speak on the phone. I really just like to be able to hear music and also to hear people talking or things like that. Really, as myself, I'm deaf, I identify as being a deaf person, but that has a lot of different meanings to everybody else that's deaf. But for me, I did this because I wanted to be able to hear music and I love it. I love it. But when it comes to children, no, I feel like we should wait and they can make that decision for themselves. Lee wants to make a comment. Yeah, sure, doctors do actually push CIs for family, and it's different. It's a decision between the family and who they are. And again, it's how they are exposed to knowledge and how deaf kids and deaf families. Now, deaf families know what to do as far as communication access. And if they have a CI, I'll tell you right now, I have a CI myself, and I've worn it until I was 19. But really, it's up to the individual to make those decisions. Great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. And then are we good? Does somebody else want to say something? Okay, Tony's saying, and the next person, because I know who this is. This is Doris, the last name. Great. Go ahead. You can take your microphone off. I think your microphone's on. I can't hear you. I think you need to turn your mute off. I think you have mute on because we can't hear you. All right. Anybody? I'm wondering if we should move on or not.
Do we know
Yeah,
if this
it seems like
person
she's
needs to sign?
struggling. My grandmother, I think she wants to speak. My grandmother, I think she wants to speak. I think that I'm not quite sure if she knows how to turn off the mute. Okay, maybe we can try again. That's fine. Okay, so we're going to try to figure that out, but we'll move on. And there was another person.
Okay, this is Doris Glave. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi, Joan, Dorsa, Hannah. I remember you guys, John 3 from years and years and years ago. But I do want to say that I'm proud of the family. I'm also proud of Tony and all of his accomplishments. I've always pushed him to never say, I can't. You always put forth an effort. Can't is not in your vocabulary. And I am so proud and loving. He is my baby. I don't care if he is 30, I won't say his age. Okay, love you, you guys. Keep up the good work. God bless all of you.
Oh, we love you too. We love you too. Thank you. Thank you. Everybody's giving you lots and lots of love. J3, did you have something you wanted to say? Growing up, I can remember always going over into Doris's home. Going over to your grandmother's home. So it was like it was my house too, because it was so close. And we used to go over there all the time. For example, if I missed the bus going to school or something, I'd always call Doris and let her know and tell them to call the bus and send the bus back to come pick me up. And I'd run over to her house right away and I'd get on that bus. So it was like, yeah, it was really great. I mean, really, it takes a village. You know that term, it takes a village. It really does. One of the cool things about, I think, this family is that It really is. We watch out for each other. We take care of each other. We got everybody's back. And it does. It takes a village. It takes a village, and we're a village, and we watch out for each other. That's right. Tony is saying everybody. And everybody knows. I think everybody who's here. So many people raised me and helped me. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, John. Okay.
Hey, Tony.
There's one question on the chat that I wanted to say.
Hey, Tony, quick question. Or not a question, rather. I was just wondering or wanted to call your attention to the fact that there are questions in the Q&A section. I don't know if you're gonna have time to answer that, but just alerting you that there are a couple of questions there.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, there was a question in the chat, and I know that there's maybe we have time for a few more. Let's see. Excuse me. We were talking about specifically where sign language and how it's been passed down from generation to generation.
If your
And there was
family
one question I wasn't.
the question is if your family originated in the United States.
Yes. I mean, am I right here? Yes. Yes, in Kentucky, Joan is saying in Kentucky. And then we migrated to Illinois. I thought it was Ohio. Oh, no. Yeah, thank you for that, Joan. And then there was another question. I think we answered some of these. Let's see. From Taisha saying, we're talking about specifically about education. How can you identify language barriers? Or any, if you have somebody who is in a deaf family, how are you, if everybody in the family is deaf and everybody has access to language, how do you identify if somebody has a learning disability or that there's some other kind of thing? How do we identify those things in our family? Hi, this is Cookie here. I think it depends. We say it always depends because there's a variety of factors in being able to identify anything like a learning disability, because it's based on the disability, is it language based, and the things that we're learning and how we develop and how language develops. So if there's a language delay, we have to be able to identify all those different things. When you have a disability that's language based, it's something you have to monitor. You have to see if it's something that comes up in the children, because all the milestones and all the markers as far as what we use are based on hearing children. They're not based on deaf children. And so how we are able to look at development has to be different. And there's different categories in language acquisition and how we're doing that and what the language exposure is, because that is the big impact on the children itself. So really, I know that's not like an in-depth answer, but it really does depend. There's so many factors that are involved in that. All right, we are almost out of time. We only have about 5 minutes left. And I'm looking if we can grab one more really good question. So if we can click on the Q&A and see if there's anything that you would like to answer. Let's see. There's one person, Kat, is there anything specific that inspires you or anything that empowers you when you talk about your family history? Oh, Scott is the last name, sorry. I know for me that our family history is extremely precious to me. It's valuable. And this is unique. Our family is unique. You see so many different, yeah, we talk about family history and the documentations of families, and often you have Black deaf families that pop up. It's not often that you see this. So this is really, really the start of having more education and more information and more storytelling and more spotlighting specifically on deaf Black families. And that's really important. And to have, to have researchers go, and we only have one Black deaf family. There isn't just one, there's several of us, but we haven't been spotlighted historically. So this is really just the beginning to be able to spread awareness and have the deaf community itself. I mean, the deaf community is extremely diverse, everything. And I'm sure we have Asian deaf families out there. We have Indian deaf families and all sorts of different, all sorts of people of color that haven't been spotlighted over the years and haven't been brought to light. So I think we really need to be able to educate the world that we do have a very large deaf family here of all different colors. Oh, thank you for that, J3. Absolutely. 2 minutes left. Chaz is saying, I can't remember the specific question was, but specifically, do we cherish our families, our history? I think it was something that it goes, what inspires us, I think, to really value our family and its history. I mean, obviously I didn't have a chance to meet my grandparents or my great grandparents, but for me, it's really specifically to see my grandfather and know with the deaf school, to hear about he was the star football player and know that that's legacy. I mean, I really loved to I was a football player as well. And when I went into college, I just kind of went in and did my thing. But I think it's important to know, to look at old articles and to read that, to know that that was my grandfather and that's his legacy. It was always inspiring to me to hear stories about him and who he was back in the day with football and all those things. And he beat this team and I'm his grandson. It was very important for me, and that meant a lot to me to have that legacy and that history and be able to be inspired by him and know that that was in my family line, that was in my blood. Yeah, we did save a lot of articles. I'm glad you were able to see those. That's fantastic. Tony is saying, okay, we really just have 1 minute. I know we need a second part where there's more. J3 saying we need more, there's more questions. We need to have a second part. I mean, we could be going all night, 2, 3, 4 hours. Really, we could. Unfortunately, we are out of time. You're absolutely right. So maybe we should have a part 2, a part 3. And I don't mind that, to keep going with these questions or having a panel, but this has been really to go into the history. It's such a big, important thing. It's I'm so grateful that we were able to have this today and set this up. And thank you everybody for coming. I'm so sorry, but we do have to wrap up. It's the end of the night. I'm not able to answer all the questions that we got, but I do want to say we will be having this panel posted and we'll be able to maybe respond to some of those audience members if you've registered, and you will get the recording and you'll be able to have your questions answered. Maybe we'll be able to do that. And with that said, I'm going to wrap up and thank everybody for coming. I want to thank my family for being here, for taking time out of their busy schedule to be with us, and the audience, everybody for joining with us. I appreciate this. I hope you really enjoyed watching the conversation. And does anybody have any last words?
Yeah, Tony, this is Sarah. Before everybody signs off, I just want to take a quick family photo, if that's okay. Just need everybody to pose. Just give me 1 second.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
Have everybody. All right, 3, 2, 1. Can
Wait,
everybody?
wait till the interpreter can get off just real quick. So that it's just the family picture. Hold on, Sarah, just a second.
Yeah,
Let's get-
Sarah, give us 1 second for the whole family to get their cameras on and we'll take the picture.
Sounds good. Ready?
What are all cameras on for the family?
Everybody here, everybody's on.
I believe everyone's on.
Okay, I'm gonna turn off now. Hang on 1 second.
Okay. There we go. I got it. I got it. Sorry, I have to make you smile for a really long time.
All right, and several family members saying, I want a copy of that picture. Good night, everybody. Be safe. Good night.